we want to keep the horse in the original adopter's hands and keep supporting them because it is a big dream and it is still a wild animal that is living in a domestic environment, and they can do some wild things that are kind of, uncomfortable or scary for an adopter.
I too was getting a lot of, these Mustangs in for training and people saying, I just don't know what to do anymore. Get them gentle, put 30 days on them, do whatever, and then sell them for me because I can't do this.
There's this dialogue out there that if something happens with the horse, it's the horse's fault. And we forget that like half of that relationship is the person.
There's this really unrealistic timeline. They see like the horse do these Mustang makeovers with professional trainers, and they expect that they're going to have their horse under saddle in like 3 to 6 months. And that's just not realistic for the average person that has other things happening in their life.
They just have this like big dream and idea in their head of like what this relationship is going to be. And these horses are so capable of doing these things. They're so capable.
How have you guys seen that this program has benefited the Mustangs?
Keeping them home. The whole point of this whole thing is to keep them in their homes. And that's the greatest success because people have come into this program saying, if things don't change, I have to rehome him or find sanctuary for him. And by the end of the program, that's just not the case anymore. And they are committed to keeping their horses.
It's almost impossible to find sanctuary for a Mustang at this point. All the sanctuaries are almost full. There's not enough private land that all the Mustangs are going to be able to go into sanctuary. It is finding those people from the public that are willing to adopt a wild horse and take on that long-term commitment.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Jana and Brittany, great to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Can you guys start by telling everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do? And maybe we'll just start with Jana and then Brittany.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jana. I own Chasing a Dream Equine. And I am a virtual coach, like a riding coach, and a training coach. So I work with people who want to kind of do the work themselves instead of sending their horse to a trainer. And because I do it virtually, I can help everybody, regardless of what time zone they may or may not be in. And that's what I do. I'm a virtual coach.
Awesome.
I'm Brittany Ference. I'm the executive director of Great Escape Mustangs, and we support with off-range, like supporting Mustangs off-range in multifaceted ways. We have sanctuary for horses, but mostly what we've been putting our energy into the last 2 years is supporting everyone that has adopted Mustangs that are struggling moving forward with their horse in a positive way. So that is how Jana and I partnered in creating the Wild Horse Partnership Program to help all the adopters that don't know how to make a positive path forward with their horse.
Awesome. And that's kind of why we're here today, is to talk about that, to let people know that there is this resource. I know a lot of people, and I was definitely one of them. You see the horses online, you see the spectacular things all these Mustang trainers are doing with them, and you finally take that leap to bring home a wild horse, and it's not always just this beautiful, connecting, easy path. For me, definitely, it was like, oh, wow, you got a lot to learn. And so I know for me, like there's a point I almost got rid of my Mustang. And I think as we can all attest to, like that, like there's no better place for a Mustang than a loving, committed home, in my opinion. And so you guys have this program to really help people when they get to that stuck point. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming from the nonprofit world, part of our program offerings is like people can reach out about relinquishing their Mustang. Our sanctuary is full, so that's kind of like what pushed us to start this program is realizing that people just don't have the right support. So Wild Horse Partnership Program really builds confidence in the individual adopter that has adopted their horse to make them understand their horse better so that we can keep them in their homes because as a nonprofit, again, we see a lot of just horses bouncing around and not really having that like strong foundation. So we agree with you that we want to keep the horse in the original adopter's hands and keep supporting them because it is a big dream. And yeah, it is still a wild animal that is living in a domestic environment and they can do some wild things that are kind of, uncomfortable or scary for an adopter. And they feel like they've gotten their hands full. And I think the other thing that we've heard feedback is they just feel like they're alone and they're the only one having a problem with their horse. But really, it's like every single person that has adopted a Mustang has had a moment they're like, why did I do this? Um, so,
Yes, very valid.
Jana, if you want to add to that, though.
Yeah, for sure. So, I've been in Mustangs my whole life. And so obviously I've had these same struggles too. I've been a professional trainer my whole life. My whole adult life anyways. So, I probably don't have the exact same experience that most adopters do, but I've helped so many people through the adoption process and through the journaling process and all of that. And Brittany and I were so aligned when we first started talking because as somebody on the trainer side, she's kind of on the nonprofit side and I'm on the trainer side. Um, I too was getting a lot of, these Mustangs in for training and people saying, I just don't know what to do anymore. Get them gentle, put 30 days on them, do whatever, and then sell them for me because I can't do this. And, or they would, send horses to me, but they didn't want to take, the lessons necessarily to learn how to work with the horse themselves. And so then when I would send the horse home, there was a disconnect between the horse and the human. And so that's why I kind of shifted my own program to a coaching based program versus I'm going to take the horse for 30, 60, 90 days and then send it on its way. I kind of made the commitment that no, the owner has to be involved. The owner has to be the person that can connect with this horse. And so when Brittany and I started talking, we were so aligned in the idea that the best way to help wild horses is to keep them in their home and keep them where they've been adopted, that creating this program kind of became a no-brainer. There was obviously, like, how are we going to do this moments, but the program itself and the foundation of what we wanted to do was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I think it is, in a way, the horse system is set up in a way that's not conducive for Mustangs because it is this idea that you get this perfectly trained horse that you do whatever you want with, or you send it to a trainer and they come back and do everything that you would like them to do. And my experience has been that Mustangs are different from the domestic horses I've interacted with in that they certainly you can break them, get them to shut down and do whatever you want in some cases. But a lot of times they really hold on to their personalities, to who they are as horses and even as wild animals with the responses that come naturally and are biologically programmed into them in a different way than domestic horses. And so what a valuable thing to bring the owner into that so that they're not always frantic if something happens, but they're like, no, I know how to handle this now. Like, I know why this reaction is happening and I know what I can do. So, talk a little bit about the difference you've seen as you've worked to bring the owner on board as part of that process rather than it being like handed off to you, get it back, and I can do whatever I want with it.
Right, right. So the biggest thing that I've noticed overall is that just the horse and the human have more success. It is the bottom line. Because like I said, when, people were sending me horses and I would just put 30, 60, 90 days on and send them home, there was that disconnect. And when the owner is involved, from the very beginning, I can teach them the tools that they need to be able to handle situations, handle problems, read their horses, do these things. So the owner themselves are equipped. The horse is learning the owner, and the horse is learning how to work with them. And so the success rate is just exponentially higher when you look at the long term. So if I took a horse and got it gentle and sent it home, there might be some short term success until. There's always an until.
Yeah.
There's always something that happens, like, oh, everything was great until the farrier came. Everything was great until I had to load him in a trailer. Everything was great until. And when the owner is involved and the owner can learn the actual skills that it takes to work with and train any horse, really, not just, a wild horse, but any horse really, the more that the owner themselves can learn how to handle these situations, the more long-term success they end up having. They might have more short-term success with, a traditional board and train, but the long-term success is exponentially better.
Yeah.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind for me is like empowerment. The people and the horse feel so empowered because you're learning this communication style and building trust. The human's building trust with the horse. The horse is building trust with the human. And it's like this path that they learn like how to speak to each other that Jana like brings to light for them, and just even understanding like what the horse is trying to communicate, or those very subtle signs that the horse maybe was communicating that an average person's not going to see. And then that's when it gets scary, or you get in situations where the horse explodes or whatever, is because you weren't listening to those subtle signs. So Jana's good at being like, oh, okay, did you see the horse communicate that, before it gets into a bigger conversation, I guess, where the horse has to speak
Yeah.
louder. Yeah, empowerment and confidence for both the horse and human is what I see. Holding the person accountable. A lot of times we like to blame that it's the horse doing things, but a lot of times it's a reflection of how the human is showing up in their life. And the horse is such a good mirror for um, life lessons. Like our conversation last month with our group call was boundaries. And a lot of times, boundaries is a human thing that we need to practice in other parts of our life as well. So you can like really, bring all that information into other parts of your life and other types of relationships outside of the wild horse relationship.
Two absolutely important points. I think you are right that there's this dialogue out there that if something happens with the horse, it's the horse's fault, and we forget that like half of that relationship is the person. So half of everything that goes wrong is the human in the relationship. Not to like shame or tell people that they're wrong, but that you have at least that much control over the situation. And if you can then learn to work with the horse, how much more powerful that can be. Um, so that's huge. And I think also that confidence piece is just huge when people are able to realize like, oh, I can deal with something. Like if it doesn't go quite right, I know how to regroup and start again. So being able to teach people those skills is so important when working with a Mustang. As you guys have seen people come to you kind of discouraged, ready to get rid of their horses, probably often getting rid of the horses, what are some of the things that led up to that? From, they started at this point where it's like they adopt this horse, they want to do this, something in them wants to do this, and then to the point where they give up and, you know, as it's not a mystery, the horses often end up in a bad place after that.
I think a lot of times it's kind of what you're talking about, Shalice, where it's like the timeline. There's this really unrealistic timeline. They see like the horse do these Mustang makeovers with professional trainers, and they expect that they're going to have their horse under saddle in like 3 to 6 months. And that's just not realistic for the average person that has other things happening in their life and, doesn't have the training behind it. So it's a lot of this like dreamy idea of I want to adopt a wild horse, and then you realize that you adopted a wild horse.
Yeah.
Uh, and so like the reality of what that is to steward a wild horse in a domestic situation. So again, it's people feeling like they're alone and they're the only ones having problems, and like the self-confidence isn't there, and so they just feel like they're not benefiting the horse because they don't feel like they have the proper tools, but that's what Janet gives them and what this program gives them. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that there's not usually like one very particular thing necessarily that sets a lot of people off. It's not like, you know, 8 out of 10 people are like, I can't pick up their feet and that's it. And like, that's the triggering point. I don't think
Hmm.
there's one specific thing. I think it's kind of like what Brittany said. They just have this like big dream and idea in their head of like what this relationship is going to be. Um because whenever anybody purchases a horse, regardless, they have something they have in mind that they want to do, whether that's trail riding or, gaming or whatever it is. Most people, when they seek out a horse, they have, I don't want to use the term agenda, but they have some sort of a broad
Yeah,
plan
for
for what
sure.
they want
Yeah.
to do, right? Um, and these horses are so capable of doing these things. They're so capable. Uh, Um, but most people coming into Mustangs have very little horse experience in general. And then you add on top of that the actual wild animal element, and I think it's just simply overwhelm. They've had some riding lessons before, maybe on a good old school horse, and or they rode as a child. One of the biggest things that we see is women who rode as young
Yeah. That's me.
teenagers and stuff, and then
Yeah.
they have a gap. Most women have a gap in their horse
Hmm.
career because they go to school, they have kids, whatever the situation is, they get married, life things happen. And so then, in their 30s and 40s, there's a shift in their life. Their kids are a little bit older, careers a little bit more settled, these kind of things. And now they have time and adult money to go buy the horse that they've always wanted, right?
Hmm.
And but they have this gap. They have a gap of skill because they stopped doing what they were doing, as a teenager, as a young adult, and then they have this gap where they haven't been practicing with a domestic horse, much less a wild horse.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a broad overwhelm, and they get this wild animal and the first time it tests a fence or, tries to run through something or whatever. It's almost like they see the visual for the first time of what the horse is capable of in a fear reaction. And they're like, I'm in over my head and I can't do this.
Yeah. I feel like you were just talking about me. That's almost my precise experience. um, a few things that you guys brought up. One, I think definitely something I did is I think a lot of people are drawn to it because they see the Mustang makeovers, definitely with online stuff. There's some big videos that have been making its way around and it just looks amazing. I definitely ran up against the comparison thing where I'm like comparing myself to a professional horse trainer where I'm, trying to take care of 6 kids and like doing horses in the few minutes I have. And I'm like, why am I not having the same results? Well, I mean, it's not a mystery, but we can still get stuck in our head in that way. So I think giving people those skills, realizing like you're not at that skill level, but you can be a huge help. And then the other one, and maybe you guys can talk about both or either of those, is just the importance of having some type of support, some type of mentorship. That is 100% for sure the reason that I was able to keep my horses, because I was able to connect with a trainer who I felt did things in a way that I could feel good about, and was like willing to help me, especially through those hard spots when I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And he'd be like, yeah, no, you absolutely can. Like it's possible. And I think that's true for anybody. Like I'm not special. I don't have any special talent, but I still have my Mustangs.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think people put a very large mental block on themselves when they get stuck in that comparison. And when they, do kind of hit those brick walls or, have a hard moment and they see other people, even, some of these super talented people that aren't professionals, but they just, I don't know, have a lot of free time. And, when they hit that wall of comparison, it can definitely like shut down the whole hope of trying for sure. Um, and yeah, I think when people have support, it's it gives you that person to, one, hold you accountable. Because again, if we're talking about, your average everyday person that has work, has family, has all of these things, putting in the time and effort for your horse in and of itself can sometimes feel like a chore.
Yeah.
And
It's easy
so,
not to.
yeah, it's easier not to. It's so much easier to just not do the thing. And so what I tell all of my students is I want at least 3 days a week, a half an hour a session. That's an hour and a half a week.
Yeah, totally doable if you commit to
You
it.
do that in an hour and a half in a week, and you will make progress. You're not gonna go, 0 to 100 like these Mustang makeover people, but if you can commit an hour and a half a week, you're going to see progress. And having somebody that they have to hold themselves accountable to, helps them do that, because they have to send me videos. We have to get on a call. We have to talk. We have to do these things. And they don't have that excuse anymore to be like, just ran out of time today. you know, it's something that they have to physically put on their to-do list like everything else. And so having that accountability speaks volumes in and of itself. And then when that person that's holding you accountable is also helping you through those hard things, then you start to actually see progress. And the more progress you see, the more confidence you get. And the more confidence you get, the more fun actually going out to work with your horses becomes. And then the more fun it becomes, then you're doing it all on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountability, I think, is a really big part of the Wild Horse Partnership Program. It's 3 months. We make people dive in for 3 months because, even that first month, you're almost getting used to like working with your horse
Yeah,
consistently.
that's like the
Which
struggle probably.
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. People have major blocks at the beginning of the program because they're like, whoa, I do have to like show up and send Jana a video every week. And sometimes that is challenging, but the accountability part, and we think 3 months commitment, you're going to get results with your horse if you do dive into the work. Again, a people problem, not a horse problem. The horse is always there willing. And after that 3 months where we see folks like dive in deep with their Mustang, then we let them jump on and off as needed with support. Like maybe they're having a positive path forward with their horse until they get to wanting to move under saddle, and then they can sign back up with us and do a month-to-month support after we learn them and their horse and their style of working together well. So accountability is a really big part of this program. The other thing that sets our program apart from a lot of other programs is it's completely customized to exactly what that horse and human are experiencing and the problems they're running up against. So Jana gets videos that are like specifically exactly what the problem is that week that they're running into or the block that they're having that week. And then you work through that problem and then you get to the next block. And so there's no like pre-recorded videos. It's all live, exactly what you're running up against with your horse. So I think that part is really powerful also compared to some of the other programs that are out there. Because yeah, it's exactly what your problem is that week.
Yeah, I would think that would be so beneficial because for me, when I was doing it, I'm like searching YouTube to like address the problem that I have with trainers that maybe haven't even worked with Mustangs. And so I think to have that instant feedback where it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this and here's some things you can try, I think would be so helpful and even help with that overwhelm and feeling like you're stuck because, you know, we do like to see progress. That is what keeps us going is to see like, oh, this is working. I can do this. And as you say, that continues to grow. I also love what you guys said about the importance of consistency because I think, you see the big moments with the Mustangs online or wherever you might see them, and you think, like, that's what I want. You don't see all the little moments behind where it's like, oh, I just noticed when their presence changed, that they were alerted to something that's making them nervous. And that's the first time I've been able to do that. So a lot of times we don't see those little steps. But that consistency is really the key is when you're building all those little tiny stepping blocks that feel like you're maybe going nowhere that are helping to also build that relationship.
Yeah, and what Jana does a really amazing job of is she there's no judgment. Like, this is a space where it's like we've all,
Mm,
pushed our horse past that threshold and exploded, or
yeah.
yeah, like it's very um like open, and it's okay to make mistakes, and also like this is how you're going to be able to read your horse better in the future. So Jana builds like this really wonderful safe space for people to open up and even talk about their personal life stuff that they have going on. It's like it's almost like a form of therapy with your
Yeah. It
riders.
always is with Mustangs, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's just so much mirroring happening. But again, Jana creates this like very safe space for people to open up and be, vulnerable. It's a vulnerable thing to not like know everything or what to do, or like you got in over your head with this one situation. So I love that with her coaching style, and it's very like positive and cheerleader, and like you got this, like you can do it, and just confidence building again, because a lot of times it is that people's just like lacking confidence in themselves. So yeah, we try to just make sure everyone feels comfortable being vulnerable, and like it's okay to make mistakes, and you didn't mess up your horse, and we're going to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because so many people like it, and I've noticed this a little bit more in the Mustang world than in like the domestic world, where a lot of Mustang people get so afraid to make a mistake that they're frozen and can't move forward to do anything.
Yeah.
And, something that I really encourage people is to just try, because, even if you make a mistake, like these horses are so forgiving and they'll be over it in seconds. So as long as you're moving forward with a good mindset and an honest willingness to try, it's okay if a mistake happens. Like there's nothing that you can do that is going to be unfixable at some point or another, and part of learning is trying.
Yeah, that is so important too because from my experience and what I've seen, the horse world can be pretty critical and judgmental. Um, and you put something online and people will just tear you apart if you did something wrong. And so
Yes.
I think there is a fear that if you admit you made a mistake or you don't know what you're doing, there is kind of this fear that like you're gonna get attacked or um, you're gonna feel worse than you already do. And a lot of times, it is a learning I mean, always it's a learning process. So just having a place where you can go where it's judgment free, like we realize the way forward is not some pretty perfect path. It's full of trips and mistakes and oops and let's back up and restart. I think
Yep.
that is huge.
Yep.
Um, and then you also talked about how, yeah, we fear like we're going to mess up and like ruin the horse. I definitely had that. My first ride, I remember I did the first ride and then it was like 3 months before I did the next one because I wanted it to be like so calm and nice, and I was like, if I prepared her right, that's what it would be like. And when I look back at it now, I'm like, she really did good. Like it wasn't crazy, but it was not like calm walking. Like we had some little bolting and explosions and
Sure.
stuff. Um, but I was just like beating myself up about it.
Mhm.
Yep.
Um, and so it really halted my progress. So just that idea that like you don't have to be perfect. Like that's not the point. And I can guarantee like my horse I don't think she has, maybe she remembers it. It does not bother her at all. Like everything wasn't this perfect little path going together that she didn't get a professional trainer. I think she's happy she gets food and loved on and places to run. So
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And, just like you said, like she may or may not remember it, but the fact is that even if she does remember it and maybe it wasn't perfect, she got over it, right? And that's what, so many people need to hear is that the horse moves past it. They live in the moment. They're not thinking about, all they can do is what's happening right now in this moment. And, we do the best that we can with the moment that we have. And that's it. That's all that there is to it, check
yeah,
your ego at the door, but bring plenty sense of humor.
Yeah, keeping
yeah,
it light and not being so like harsh on yourself with judgment. And then also just, how any relationship is, if you're willing to still show up and try, and, showing up is the thing. Your horse is going to be like, heck yeah, let's show up. Let's,
Yep.
I'm here for it. And, that can again reflect in any relationship that you have. You just have to keep continuing to show up and try and like hold yourself accountable, and you're going to keep moving forward. So,
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed with Mustangs is a lot of times they are very personable. I feel like they really do enjoy and participate in the relationship in a way. Talk a little bit about how you have seen that change things for the owner, the person that the horse is going to be with, hopefully forever, to be the one that steps in that role where they're learning this human world, these dynamics together. How does that change compared to like send your horse away, bring it back, cross your fingers, hope for the best?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think one of the biggest reasons why coaching is so great for the human is because there's no question at that point, how your horse is being treated, if you're getting what you're paying for, all of this kind of stuff. Because guess what? You're doing the work.
Yeah.
So there's that question can just be left over there, and it doesn't need to be
Mhm.
addressed anymore because you're the one doing the work. So you have complete autonomy and control over that. And I think that sets a lot of people at ease. And so that just changes their energy about it, number one. And so that allows the relationship to start better, in my opinion. Um, and when I'm looking at like comparatively, like I said, if you send your horse to a trainer for, say 90 days or whatever, the short-term success is probably going to be a little bit more. It's going to feel that way. I'm going to say that it's going to feel that way because you're getting a horse fresh from a trainer who has probably worked 5, 6 days a week. And, they in that time, they were obviously taught a lot of things and everything. And so they get home and that horse is still in that I'm being worked 6 days a week kind of mindset. Everything is still fresh for them. But that doesn't mean that the training transfers. The trust doesn't transfer because that horse doesn't know that you're paying the bills. That horse doesn't
Yeah.
know that, you're the one responsible for the hay showing up every morning. They don't know
Right.
that. They just know who's feeding them every morning, right? Um, but because that horse is fresh from the trainer, it's going to feel like you're having a lot of short-term success because you can get that horse home and you can probably fumble through a good handful of rides all on your own with no issues, with relatively no issues, right? But what you're not noticing in those first few rides with your freshly trained horse is that, oh, he was kind of ducking his shoulder over by the gate, but I didn't notice. And then every time you ride, now he's ducking his shoulder a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then the next thing that you know, you can't get him away from the gate, right? So now your short-term success has turned into long-term frustration. Okay. But when we're working in a coaching situation where it's the owner doing the work and there's somebody on the outside saying, hey, pay attention to that. Did you see that? Did you notice that? Because your average person doesn't. But when there's somebody there to point it out, that sticks in their brain and they will forever notice that from that moment on. They will forever notice when a horse does X, Y, or Z, right?
Mhm.
So your short term success feels tedious sometimes. We'll say tedious because it's not that you're not seeing success, it's just that it might feel a lot slower. But in that moment, I'm not just teaching the horse, I'm teaching the human. So I have two students instead of one if I was just working with the horse by myself. I have two students that I need to teach, right? And so your short term success might feel slower. But in the long run, you're not going to have those same problems because you have learned to read your horse. The horse has learned to read you. And through working together, you've developed that bond between the two of you that you never developed when the horse was at the trainer's. The trainer developed a
Yeah.
bond with that horse, but you didn't.
Right. Yeah.
And so because you're doing the work, you're creating that bond. And then like I said, I have 2 students, so both the horse is learning and the human is learning. And so long term, that whole relationship as a whole is going to be better and more successful than if you just send the horse to a trainer and hope for the best, because the human didn't learn what it needed to learn at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, again, Wild Horse Partnership became a thing, is because Great Escape's model was we had, 5 to 15 Mustangs that we were training and sending on and adopting out, and we kept getting feedback. We had professional Mustang trainers that we like believe in their training style, and they were very, very much so successful with the horse. But then if the adopter could not work directly with the trainer after that horse was adopted out, we kept getting feedback from the adopter that the horse didn't know as much as we let on. And that's not true. It was that the human, the adopter, didn't understand the communication style that the professional trainer
Yeah.
put in that horse, or didn't do exactly the right like spot on the horse for whatever cue that they were asking. And so it became kind of like a huge money pit, because they want to like return the horse, and it wasn't the horse's problem, it was again a people problem. And so this is like filling a gap that I've heard over and over again, even with what Jana was saying with trainers. They take on the horse for 30 or 60 days, and then the adopter gets them back. And then the adopter's like, oh, this horse isn't doing what you said you trained them to do. And it kind of becomes like a negative thing for trainers and for folks that are like they really are putting in the work.
For everybody.
Yeah, for everybody. And so again, Wild Horse Partnership became this crucial gap in education for the adopter and the horse to move forward together. And yeah, really just like resolving an issue that everyone was seeing over and over again. The person has to show up and be accountable for the horse that they have taken on.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. How important do you guys think it is for someone who adopts a Mustang to be willing to work on themselves?
They have to.
Crucial. Crucial.
That's like what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely crucial. Now, with that, I will say that I think what's even more important, I mean, obviously, a willing to work on yourself, a willing to work on your horse, just understanding that it's going to take work one way or the other is important. But I think the other part of that is being humble enough to know and understand that you are going to need help. Even the average horse rider who has a lot of experience with domestics, even that average person, if they're not a professional trainer, there's going to be hiccups that they're not prepared for, because this is a totally different animal. We all know that, right? And so just being able to be humble enough in the first place before you ever even bring anything home to say, I'm probably going to need help. And I should probably know where that help is going to come from before I sign these adoption papers. Because then you don't get 6, 9, 10 months down the road with zero progress and get to that point where you're like, I'm done.
Yeah. And I think the reality is you should always be learning. I just talked to a professional trainer, someone who gets paid to train horses, and he was just talking about he bounces ideas off other trainers. He asks other trainers. He's watching videos. So I don't think that's even like a skill level thing necessarily. It's more a mindset
Yeah.
that like
Yep.
there's always stuff to learn, and horses are going to be different, and a horse may come up and do something that you're like, I'm not sure what to think about that or how to approach that. And then this outside perspective can come in and say, oh yeah, why don't you try this? Or I've seen this. So I think that is absolutely essential for someone. Let's talk a little bit about someone who wants to adopt a Mustang, and the different things that you guys have seen lead to successful adoption, from the costs of it. Because I think a lot of people, I got my Mustang, total transparency, because it was cheap. And I have lots of kids. I'm like, I can get a cheap horse, you know? So let's talk a little bit about that. It was not cheap in time. And anyone who has a horse knows that like buying the horse is probably the smallest expense you're ever going to have. Where that commitment needs to be, to like the mindset you need to have, the commitment that's important. What are the things you guys have seen is important for an adoption to be successful if you decide to bring a Mustang into your home?
When our model was that we were taking on a lot of Mustangs and training and putting a good foundation on them and then adopting them out, people get really set on color and size and very, very interesting things that people have in their mind, that they think they want in a horse, and they totally ignore the character of the horse or like um the behaviors or the demeanor. We just saw this. We went to a an adoption auction, and Jana and I were kind of, like laughing in the corner because these horses, some of the highest bid horses were based off of how pretty they were, their size, and then like the ones that had the best like character in front of a crowd of people went for, the some of the lowest prices, and people are just totally not paying attention to the horses like natural character. It's kind of funny. I'm sure this horse is going to do just fine. The trainer just didn't necessarily like train the horse to hear clapping and screaming because the horse went for like I think over 8,000
Wow.
yeah, it was amazing. It was great. But like right after that moment, the horse like totally became a bronc because it never had heard clapping or screaming. And so it just like lost all control. But it was like kind of funny because it's like the highest bid horse like still has that behavior. It's still a wild horse.
Yeah.
And that was the crowd's fault. And maybe, the trainer didn't just, think about that part of like, oh, everyone's like clapping and screaming, and this horse is like, why are we all screaming? And it's
Yeah.
just it
Yep.
was it was just like a moment of like laughter though, because you're like, oh, you're just like totally ignoring character. So I think I have two bays, and like sometimes bays are like bypass because there's
Yeah.
like basic bay Mustangs, but they
Lots
are
of times.
so solid. They're so
Mhm.
solid. And so don't get caught up on color and size. The horses that are just very basic looking and not flashy are sometimes like the best ones and the most solid minded ones. So
Yep.
yeah, that's my
100%.
advice.
Yeah.
Don't get attached to color.
Right. Yeah. Definitely don't get attached to color. I would say the same thing for don't get attached to sex. Everybody has their preference of mare or gelding, but if the horse is right, the horse is right. But I think in a broader sense, what you brought up, I just posted about this exact thing on my social accounts is so many people get into Mustangs as a cheap way to get into horses. And it's common, when you have horses for $125 and you have people who don't have $10,000-$20,000 to go spend on a well-broke horse. um they're going to see the price tag and they're going to see an avenue into horse ownership. And that's not necessarily wrong, right? But as far as like what people should be prepared for is you're going to and trainers preach this so often it almost feels like beating a dead horse, right? That you're going to pay it in the purchase price or you're going to pay it in training.
Oh yeah.
Whether you are training that horse and having coaching or whether you send it to a trainer, whatever the case, you're going to pay it one way or another. It's just how would you like to pay? And I think people also need to understand that the industry itself has shifted, as well as the economy. And so, the days of sending a horse to a trainer for $500 a month are over. They're just simply over. And the day of, $2,000 well-broke horses is also over. And coaching is no different. Coaching expenses have come up as well. And if you want a good coach, you need to expect to pay them well as well. Because what we're seeing in the industry overall, again, not just in the Mustang world, but in the industry overall as trainers, is that we're losing a lot of good trainers because they can't afford to stay in business
Yeah.
with the cost of living. And so if you're getting into horses, horses cost money. whether they're domestic or wild, whether you're paying it in the purchase price or whether you're paying it with training. Horses cost money, and there's no way around that. If you want to be involved, you need to budget for it.
Yeah, I think that's important. Tell us about some of the success stories that you guys have seen since you've started this program. How it has maybe helped some people, how it's helped the horses.
One particular student that we had in our first session last year, she she just dove right in. She's never missed a session. She continued education with me after the initial 90-day program. And when we first started, she and her horse were so disconnected. They they didn't have any, like round penning basics down or anything. He was snorty and high-headed. Like he was gentle. She could lead him around and stuff. But he was definitely, a kite. And on his tiptoes, and as of just the last month or so that she's been working with me, we're like this close to putting the first ride on him. And that's so exciting. And the only like hiccup that we've had in the last month is she had some personal things that she had to take a little bit of time for. Um, Otherwise we would have already done it. But she started up again last week, and we're just doing a few little refreshers, and then we're this close to putting the first ride on. And 9 months ago, it was her wildest dream. She was like, I just want him to acknowledge that I'm in the same space as him.
Oh, yeah.
And now they're getting ready to ride.
Yeah.
Yay.
That's awesome. And what a great story of success, too, because it wasn't a 30-day you're riding out on the
Good.
trails. That was
Yeah.
like, what, a year that she's working with him. And
Mhm.
that is still success.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And, again, that's why I keep kind of going back to that idea of, it might feel like you're having more success in the short term when you send your horse to somebody for 90 days.
Yeah.
But when you look at the long-term success, what this girl and her horse are going to have in a partnership by the time they actually hit the trails is epic. You're not going to be able to, separate those two with a crowbar. Like it's just not going to happen. They're going to be so melded together because she's the one that's put in the work that their long-term success is unlimited. Unlimited.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what the girl that Jana's talking about, like when I had the original discovery call when she was deciding if this program was a good fit for her, she pretty much was at the point where she's like, if I don't move forward with my horse, I'm gonna have to move him along at some point. And so yeah, now they're following their dreams, their biggest dreams and the first ride
Yeah.
stuff.
What a
Yeah.
great
And
success story.
yeah, and at this point, I don't think you could offer her $15,000 and she would sell him. I don't think you could buy him from her. And a year ago, she was like, if he doesn't get his act together, he's got to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jana has a lot more intimate individual relationships. I just lead the group calls and do the discovery calls and I'm support. But it's kind of cool because I do come in like once a month and see we have like kind of like roundtable discussion of where folks are at and just I still know them because I'm still having the onboarding calls with them at the beginning. But then like month by month, I get to almost see like a bigger growth, I guess, because I'm not seeing them on a weekly basis. And it literally like brings me to tears because again, we're like this program is just doing so much good work for the Mustangs and for the adopters. Like it just makes me so happy to see the amount of confidence and like excitement that these folks have that they didn't necessarily have when they like entered the program. They're like, you know, uh feeling not sure what to do, overwhelmed, I guess. And so, yeah, now everyone's like super happy to tell their success stories to the rest of the group. And it literally like brings me to tears because the work that we're doing is just so important. So,
Very cool.
And that's something I would add to someone. If you're thinking of adopting a Mustang, I would say go in it wanting to have a partnership with a horse. There's a lot of horses you can buy that you can just take out and go riding. Probably not a Mustang. Maybe some Mustangs, but the typical Mustang, you're going to have to put some more time and energy and effort into that. So I think that's Really important. Um, Tell everybody a little bit more about how they can connect with you guys, find out if this program might be right for them.
Yeah, so it's the Wild Horse Partnership Program on greatescapemustangs.org. We can link it in your show notes. And how it works is you do a discovery call to learn if it's a good fit for you and your horse with me. And then you also are more than welcome to talk to Jana about her training style to make sure it's a good fit for you. I know a lot of folks have had hired trainers maybe that weren't a good fit and they kind of have some like trainer anxiety or whatever to make sure that they feel like it's a good environment for them. So we of course want to make sure that it feels good and aligned for them just as much as it's aligned for us. And we run three-month long programs, so 3 times per year. We take the winters off because a lot of times folks don't have the proper facility for winter work, so it's a little slower. You're still able to do, if you've gone through the 3-month original program, you still can do like monthly support through the winter, but a lot of folks have taken the winter off is kind of how we felt like the vibe was this past year. And then they dive back in the spring when the ground's dry. Um, so yeah, we're doing we're on our second one. It starts in June, right?
Yes, the
Yeah,
second one starts in June.
So coming up soon.
yeah,
Yeah, so open enrollment will start in May.
yeah. And we're also planning to do a week-long intensive this year and just kind of do the basics of, I can let Jana talk about it more in depth because she's leading the program, but we are trying to get folks to just like even learn the basics. And that week-long intensive is more of that platform. It's not so much customized stuff, even though we're allowing them to send in one video with their horse and kind of get an overall review. But if they want to deep dive with their horse, the Wild Horse Partnership Program is the way to go. So
Yeah, and the intensive, I would say the intensive is more talking training philosophy and different types of training and how they work and why versus if you have a problem with X, Y, and Z, this is how you fix it. It's more of a, hey, this is how positive reinforcement works. This is how negative reinforcement works. This is how you can combine the two for a lot of success. Whereas the actual Wild Horse Partnership Program is that one-on-one. What are your actual issues? How is this applicable? How can I help you very specifically? That's kind of the biggest difference between the two.
Is there anyone that this program might not be a good fit for?
The only person that I would say that this would not be a good fit for is people who cannot commit to the hard work. And like I said, I ask for an hour and a half of your time out with your horse on a weekly basis. And that's hard for some people. Sometimes that's too much. And if that's too much, there's no judgment. Um, but but you have to give us at least that if you want to see any success in the program.
Yeah.
yeah, I second that. I think when I do the discovery calls, if the folks, you have to want to do the work. And if you want to send your horse off and have the problems fixed and then get it back and not be intimately involved with your Mustang, this program's not a good fit for you. We want people to really commit to the partnership of them and their horse and the relationship and the deep dive. So if they're not willing to dive deep, then yeah, that's where we see people get blocked sometimes.
Yeah. And I think even if you're thinking about getting a Mustang, like, I think that's something important to have in mind. Are you willing to commit to this horse? Are you willing to do what it takes? If the journey doesn't look pretty, are you going to stick in there when it's hard and ugly and mistakes happen and it gets scary? Definitely important things to consider if you're going to bring a Mustang into your home. Do you guys have advice or resources? Do you guys have any advice or resources that people can use if maybe it's in between programs, they can't access it right now, maybe they don't have the money right now? What suggestions might you have for those adopters?
I mean, they can they can always like follow my stuff. I do do tips and things like that on my pages, short videos, reels and stuff like that sometimes have tips and stuff in them. But I would say in the meantime, like if you are in the middle of, programs and it's going to be a month or two before you can get in on it, I would say still show up for your horse. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just get to the barn, just show up and do something in the meantime. And when that window opens up, jump in and we can go from there and really start to steamroll your success. But in the meantime, still show up. That's my biggest thing is just show up.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, any relationship, requires you to show up. And that's kind of why we have the intensive again. It's, a way to dive in and feel like you can ask questions directly to Jana and get support, but it's not going to be that deep dive in that like really progressive route. And then as far as like finances go, it's more affordable than hiring or sending it off to a trainer. And you're learning the work. So I feel like, again, like if anyone has a financial block around it, then that's just them having a block around it. If you really want to do something, you will find a way to pay for it. And we do have payment programs. We have early bird discounts. Like I am more than willing to support folks with even a longer payment program. It is all about the Mustang and supporting the Mustang and the person and making sure that they, again, have a positive path forward. So that's why I do discovery calls, is because that is kind of more like individual information and what a person needs in order to commit to the program. But there's definitely different routes that they can take with payments. Yeah, we don't like require everyone to pay up front. And again, like if anyone has an argument on cost, send their horse to a trainer, but it's going to be more expensive in the long run.
It's going to be more expensive and again, you don't have that autonomy over what's happening with your horse. And that's huge. I cannot stress that enough. That is so huge. And then the second piece of that is this is anytime you learn, knowledge is power. And so the value that you are getting from learning how to do this yourself is so much more than passing the buck to somebody else. Because let's say in 5 years you go to adopt another horse. You still have the information that I taught you. So the value is so much more than just the face value of what you see in the idea of, oh, I get 3 months of coaching. There's so much more involved in it. And that's knowledge that you get to keep versus, like I said, if you hand it off to somebody else, you don't know what they did to get those results. You have no idea. So you can't apply that to any other aspect of your horsemanship or your partnership with your Mustang.
Yeah, I agree. It is such a great long-term investment. It's one that will serve you over time. I had that exact experience also when I was at a point where I was really struggling. I was thinking, okay, this is almost embarrassing, but I couldn't walk my horse outside the corral without her freaking out. And then my anxiety would just go crazy. So I was like, maybe I'll, I'll just send her to a trainer so she can walk out of a corral. And I went and like checked this trainer out, and the horses she had didn't want anything to do with her. They were as far away from the stall as they could possibly be. And I just thought, I don't want that. I don't want to be able to walk my horse out of the corral at the expense of her wanting to be around me. Like I loved that she had some connection with me and wanted to be around me. So just the idea that you can find someone to support you in a way that is the way you want to work with your horse, that you can develop the type of relationship that you want to have with your horse, not outsource that and hope that it comes back okay. And we did kind of talk about like, you can't mess up, your horse will forget it. But on the same hand, if they're consistently treated in certain ways, that's going to stick with them a little bit more. So if they do go to a trainer that's using harsher methods that you're not wanting to incorporate into your training, the results are going to be different for good or bad. So just that idea that you do have that autonomy, you have that control over the way that it all happens is a huge one. It's definitely one that was important for me, and I'm so grateful I never sent her away. And I really was scared, like if I send her to this trainer, she might come back and like all the trust that we did build, even though we couldn't walk outside the crowd together without us both being anxious, like that might all be gone. So
Right. Right.
I just
100%.
can't advocate enough for how important it is for you to learn and have a relationship with your horse. And I think this program you guys have is such a perfect way for you to be able to do that and to build that partnership and to be able to have all your dreams come true of what you wanted to have with the Mustang when you adopted it.
Yeah. 100%.
To wrap up, can you guys share where people can find you? We'll also include these in the notes, but can you include where people can find you, how they can connect with you?
Mhm. Both
Yeah,
of
for
us.
sure.
Oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Tina.
Go ahead, Brittany.
Both of us are super active on social media, Instagram and Facebook. We do combined combo posts like pretty often. But ours is Great Escape Mustangs as the handle for Facebook and for Instagram. And then we also have our website, greatescapemustangs.org. And yeah, Jana's the partner for Wild Horse Partnership Program with Chasing a Dream Equines.
And then my handles for both Instagram and Facebook are also just Chasing a Dream Equine. And you can find me both of those places, and all of my contact information is on both of those. So
Yeah. Awesome. One last thing I wanted to ask you guys that I forgot. How have you guys seen that this program has benefited the Mustangs?
keeping them home. That's the whole point. That is the whole kit and caboodle of this whole thing, is that the best way to help these horses is to keep them in their homes and not have to rehome them, not have to find them sanctuary, not have to have people feeling like they need to give up. The whole point of this whole thing is to keep them in their homes. And that's the greatest success, is because people have come into this program saying, if things don't change, I have to rehome him or find sanctuary for him. And by the end of the program, that's just not the case anymore. And they are committed to keeping their horses. And I think that's everything.
Yeah, agreed. There's coming from the nonprofit side, it's almost impossible to find sanctuary for a Mustang at this point. All the sanctuaries are almost full. There's not enough private land that all the Mustangs from the public land are going to be able to go into sanctuary. So it is finding those people from the public that are willing to adopt a wild horse and take on that long-term commitment. And uh, again, it was like an answer to the problem that I kept seeing over and over and over again. And the off-range support model of Great Escape is folks wanting to relinquish their horse or not feeling like they have the right support or feeling very overwhelmed. Like, this is the answer to the problem. And so when Jana and I connected at the beginning, and we were like so aligned with what we both were seeing, it just flowed. Like, it was one of those things that was like manifesting for almost like a year and a half in my brain. And then Jana and I met, and it just was birthed
It just
like
happened.
automatically. Yeah, we're doing
Yeah.
this, which
Yep.
I am so thankful for Jana, because if it was like me trying to do this on my own, it's impossible because I'm not a trainer. So I'm just so thankful for our partnership, and it's been like, again, it just was like divinely aligned that this is coming in. And now yeah, now our goal is to just get more and more folks to know about it. And we're just doing organic marketing, which is, again, challenging to be seen sometimes in the very busy social media world. So thank you, Shalise, for allowing us to come on here and speak and get it out to everyone. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you guys so much for being here, for talking about the program and talking about a lot of the common things that people are running into. I think from my own experience, even, you can feel very alone and feel like maybe I'm the only idiot over here that doesn't know how to, work with these horses. And that's not the case at all. Like, it is a process. It is different than probably anything you've ever experienced with horses. But thank you guys for the work you're doing, for the help that you're offering people. And I really just want to put a plug in. Like, if you need help, if you're thinking about, maybe you're not the best home for your horse, I guarantee that you are, and that you can learn the things that you need to. And this program offers awesome support for anyone who's at that point where you really have this desire, but you need a little help to get over those hard moments. There are going to be hard moments when you have a Mustang, in my experience. And if you are needing some support, just such a really great place to go. So thank you guys for coming on, for doing what you do, for working for the benefit of not just the horses, but the humans that work with them also, because I think it is that partnership that's going to make a better world for the Mustangs and for us as people, because as we've kind of talked about, when you work with Mustangs, you learn a lot about yourself, whether it's from setting boundaries to gaining confidence. There's just so many great lessons that the horses can teach us when we stick with them.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.